Right, in this session we're going to go over the last Chartist disturbance of the period, the Kennington Common Fiasco of 1848. Obviously we've already done the 1839 Newport Rising and 1842 plug plot, so this will mark the end of Chartism, and Chartism essentially fizzles out towards the beginning of the 1850s due to economic recovery. But let's take a look at the Kennington Common fiasco. So, in 1847, Chartist leaders began organising a third petition and a new national convention. This national convention met in London in April of 1848. At this convention, the delegates planned a peaceful mass demonstration to be held at Kennington Common on April 10th. The meeting would be followed by a procession that would present the third Chartist petition to Parliament. The delegates asserted that if this petition was rejected by Parliament, the National Convention would set up a National Assembly which would call on Queen Victoria to dissolve Parliament. The middle and upper classes of London were extremely concerned that this demonstration could result in revolutionary activity, which resembled the activity observed in Paris earlier that year, where the monarch was forced to abdicate, and a short-lived republic was in power until Napoleon III took power. As a result of this concern, the government permitted the meeting at Kennington Common. So, government preparations for a suspected revolution. The government placed the Duke of Wellington, Arthur Wellesley, in charge of the defence of London. The Duke swore in thousands of special constables in preparation for the 10th of April. The Duke placed troops throughout the capital, but many were concealed in the dense urban terrain, a similar tactic to the one he had used in Waterloo. The bridges of the Thames were where the Duke situated the bulk of his force. These units of foot and horse police were reinforced by special constables. A strong military force was also situated within close range, with 1,200 infantry placed at Deptford dockyards, with 30 heavy field ordnance placed at the Tower, and there are essentially 30 cannons. All of the military units would be ready for instant movement by hired steamers. Many bodies of troops were placed out of sight but within range of sudden command. Various important locations, such as the Bank of England, were protected by troops and artillery, with the defences strengthened with sandbag parapets on their walls. Holes were placed in these buildings to allow for the fire of defensive musket rounds, and that's obviously a very similar tactic to the one utilised later in the period during the defence of Rorke's Drift in, I believe, 1879. It is estimated that at least 120,000 special constables were sworn in prior to this demonstration. So, the final major Chartist disturbance, because obviously this was the last one of the three that we've gone over. When the meeting gathered, it was swiftly dispersed in a peaceful manner. This was because Chartist leaders such as Fergus O'Connor appealed to the demonstrators to leave peacefully. The pro-government press described this event as a fiasco, but it is clear by the preparations made by the government that the demonstration posed a very real revolutionary threat. Contemporary thinkers condemned the Chartist leaders for showing cowardice. However, modern historians applaud the actions of the leaders as they prevented what would have been a very effective propaganda campaign for the government, and obviously, if it turned violent, likely a massacre. Ultimately, this was the last real Chartist disturbance of any significance, and it was determined to have been a moral force victory for the Chartists, as they had maintained their right to peacefully petition Parliament, and they prevented the demonstration from descending into violence. 2 days later, the third petition was presented to Parliament, but it turned out that 3 million of the 5 million signatures were fraudulent. Chartism continued during the 1850s, but it possessed far less power due to the fact that there had been an economic recovery, and Robert Peel's government passed major reforms that made the demands of the People's Charter seem outdated. So obviously Robert Peel did stuff like repeal the Corn Laws in 1846. He did stuff like the Miners Act, and obviously a lot of laissez-faire capitalist economics. So these reasons for the subsidence of Chartism are disputed, as the economic recovery occurred slightly after the decline of Chartism, and Chartist disturbances occurred during the same years as important pieces of legislation, such as the Miners and Collars Act of 1842, which prohibited child labour in the mines, establishing the minimum working age for miners to be 10 years old. I believe that the decline of Chartism can be prescribed to the actions of Robert Peel's government, which made many of their policies and slogans seem outdated. So that's it for Chartism. I'm going to do a short series on every parliamentary reform between 1780 to 1885 next. So this pretty much finishes up the popular protest question. However, since this ends at the 1850s, and your exam takes you up until about 1885, you basically cover the rest of the period through trade unionism. So that'll be something that we go over in the future as well. Anyway, that's it.